When the name Emma Meawasige comes up in conversations, I immediately envision someone who embodies the 7 grandfather teachings. Emma is a cherished elder in my community, and she is also a great-grandmother. When I am around her, I feel like I am wrapped in comfort, and she has an ability to make people feel at ease. In my opinion, the very definition of elder is one who was raised with ancestral knowledge and wisdom from infancy.
I can remember like a lot of things that Grandma taught us. Everybody else went picking berries. We had to stay with Grandma because we were too small to look after her, like all over the rocks. So Grandma used to show us how to play some little games and make little things with sticks and stones because we had no toys.
Yeah.
And she took us up on the rocks. She showed us that liking, that black liking and the gray liking. And she was telling us that long, long time ago, before, like, would have been her grandmother's time, when the families were hungry, they didn't have nothing to eat. They always kept bear grease, all the time for emergency use, for medicinal, and for the purpose of like putting a little bit in the soup so it would flavor it a little bit. And she said they used to cook that liking in there, in that broth, bear broth, and that's what they had to eat to stay alive.
Hmm.
And when they went out on an island, they always looked out under the rocks, because if somebody wasn't able to, like, if it was too stormy, they'd have to stay on the island for a while. But they would catch fish, and the bones, they used to hide them under the rocks. So there's flavor in those rocks yet. So they would dig out those bones and make soup out of them. And again, they would look around to see what else they could put in that broth, that soup bone broth, in order to stay alive. Yeah, that was the stories that Grandma used to show us and tell us. She used to make all kinds of things with birch bark for us to learn how. She'd take a piece of birch bark, fold it up, and then chew on it and make designs, fancy designs on that birch bark. And then she would have us see who can make the nicest one. So we had to sit around there and chew on that bark there so we could make some designs.
Yeah.
It was a good pastime. She taught us a lot of things, the old lady. And sometimes she would be minding the fire when they had to smoke fish or meat. There was Grandma. She fed the fire. They brought her the wood, but it was to keep us away from the fire, and she fed the fire like slowly, because she'd be either tanning the hides or smoking fish. And she'd be turning those fish around there so they'd get nice and dry. And then they used to put them in a dark cabin, well, it's more like a shed. Mm-hmm. Grandpa had a shed with poles across there where they would hang the fish and the meat they got. They would try that. It was always, how do you call that? Soaked in salt water first, brine.
Yep.
They would brine it with salt water and just shake it off, and they would put it where all that smoke was. So Grandma used to have to watch that smoking bit, and then they would put it in that shed to keep. And that's how they stored their fish and their meat.
In a shed.
Yeah, in that dark shed. So they had it whenever they needed. They used to store a lot of meat and fish in the fall time, And that's what they would do. They would hang it up there. She used to teach us how to form little sticks together. And those were our little stick dolls. Boy dolls and girl dolls used to put leaves on the girl dolls. That was something. But Grandma really taught us a lot of things when she was babysitting us, because she got our attention and we didn't scatter around all over.
It's not like there were TVs or...
Well, we didn't have no toys.
Yeah.
We didn't have no toys, so she made us things that we could make ourselves and play with. And sometimes she would just tell us, "Come and stand over here. You watch me what I do. Someday you're going to do this, so you watch me what I do." That was a famous one, that one.
Yeah.
Even my mother used to do that to me.
How would they say it in Anishinaabe?
Machan man pi. Kano mission man pi ishtigat. Mika she can make giginwa pimanda winan cake. Mima the can make washich cake. Yeah. And that was the big schooling we had. You come here, you stand here, you watch me. This is how we were taught mostly. We had to learn by... If we had to ask a question, we did. We were allowed to ask a question. Why this and why that? And what's that for? So that was okay. Not too many though. That was the way we learned how to do things. I'll tell you another one about clothespins. We never even had a clothesline with pulley. It was just a clothesline out of some old wire or rope, whatever they had. Mm-hmm. No clothespins. My mother would go close by there in the bush and get some of that pin cherry tree. There's lots in the back there. It's brown, eh? It looks like birch bark, but it's brown. And there's little red berries that come on there. And you can eat them, pin cherries. Well, they'd get the ones, maybe about this size, trees. They would cut it about this. And they would strip about half of that, strip the outside bark, and scale off the inside. And then they would split it. And then they would gouge out the inside of it a little bit and just shape it oval at the end over here. You had a clothespin.
Yeah.
That's the only kind my mother ever used, was the one she made. Yeah, I remember that. It was pretty neat. She never bought clothespins. She made them.
And that's how they're shaped too, eh?
Yeah.
The older ones, they're rounded at the end with just a slit in the middle.
Yeah. You couldn't break them either because the bark was holding them over here on the top half.
Anishinaabe invented clothespins. This is the story of how the Anishinaabe invented the clothespins.
Yeah, that was pretty neat.